Hello everyone and welcome to Tariq. In today's episode, we'll be telling you about the Ajivika sect. In the 6th century BCE, there was an explosion across India, explosion of various school of thoughts and beliefs and thoughts regarding life, thoughts regarding God, thoughts regarding the existence. And along with this, there were various thinkers also emerging across the subcontinent. During this time, we see the emergence of the 16 Mahajanapadas also, and along with that, we see Buddhism rising up, Jainism rising up, and these were all the heterodox sects. Heterodox means something that was opposite of orthodox. So though there were Vedic practices taking place, Hindu sects were also there, but these sects also emerged because people started questioning life, people started questioning existence, and during this period, these school of thoughts, they started questioning the existence of God, whether everything was pre-planned or predestined, or whether everything was on us. Whether there was God, whether there was just an energy there, whether there were various gods. So people were really clueless and they wanted to understand the meaning of life. Along with Buddhists, along with Jains and Lokayats and Realists, there was also another sect that grew and that emerged during this period. They were known as Ajivikas. जो आजीविका सेक्ट थे, there were apparently various leaders who were part of it, and the most important of the Ajivika leaders was Makhali Gosala. According to Bhagavati Sutta, which was a very important Jain text, they mentioned that Makhali Gosala was the 24th Tirthankar of the Ajivika sect. The central belief of the Ajivikas was that everything is predestined, and that means niyati ke upar hai sab kuch, and we do not have any control, like our actions don't have any control, and there's no such consequences. मतलब हर चीज आपके, चाहे आप गलत कर रहे हैं चाहे आप सही कर रहे हैं, जो ऑलरेडी चीज प्रीडेस्टिन्ड है, जो लिखी गई है वही होगी. जो एक सोल है, उसका कोर्स जो है वो एक थ्रेड ऑफ बॉल की तरह है. जब उसका एक थ्रेड निकलता जाता है तो आपकी लाइफ भी आपके सामने दिखती चली जाती है, जो लाइफ में आने वाला पल है. So whether you have to suffer, you have to seek happiness, you have to experience happiness, you have to feel sorrow, joy, life, death. That's a part of your destiny. And जब ये वो thread खत्म होता है उस ball से, that then you are liberated and then you attain nirvana.
Because many of these heterodox sects emerged and existed around the same time and were in a way challenging the orthodox beliefs, that of the Vedas. Their thought processes and their practices overlap. So for instance, the Ajivikas also, in their case, just like the Jains, they would practice severe austerities. जो उनकी तपस्या होती थी, it would be very strict and hard, like lying on a bed of nails, or getting into, or doing dhyan in a big earthen pot or something like that, doing without food. So it was very the penances that they would put themselves through was very hard. Like the Jains, the Ajivikas also had saints that would go in the nude, and if not the entire section of believers, at least the leaders were known to have renounced their clothes. One very important feature of these heterodox sects, and this is true for the Ajivikas as well, is that they denounced caste distinctions, which was a somewhat central theme in Vedic beliefs. You don't see that in the case of the Ajivikas. They welcomed one and all, and everybody was equal because everybody was suffering through life. And just like in the case of Buddhism, which spread to the other parts of the not just the subcontinent but also Southeast Asia. The same is the case for Ajivikas. When you hear the term now, you think, maybe it was an obscure sect sometime in ancient India, but that is not the case. Although the stronghold of the Ajivika sect seems to be in the area of Magad, which is in present day around UP, Bihar, that region, it spread towards the south as well as Sri Lanka, and the tales of their austerities that this Ajivika sect के जो saints थे, उनकी जो तपस्या थी, it used to be so hard that the news of this even traveled as far as China.
The Jains and Buddhists were very critical of the Ajivikas, and especially Makhali Gosala, who was one of the most important leaders of this Ajivika sect. This shows that the Ajivikas had Buddhists and Jains as its important rivals. In fact, कहा जाता है कि जो मखाली गोसाला थे, उनकी बहुत जोरदार आर्ग्यूमेंट चली थी with Mahavir, who was one of the most important Tirthankars of Jainism. So they've had arguments with each other, and mostly because they do not agree with their own thought processes. Like if Jain ki jo thought process hai, Ajivikas didn't agree to it. Similarly, Buddhists did not agree to what Ajivikas thought about life. So because of this, even leaders were quarreling with each other.
This in fact shows us that the Ajivika sect was so powerful and it had amassed a considerable amount of followers that this had raised insecurities in the minds of the Buddhist sect and the Jain sect. Alternatively, this also shows you a very active practice of arguing and counter-arguing that was prevalent in ancient India, where a number of beliefs could exist at the same time, even though they were at loggerheads with each other.
This also shows that ancient India was just not about Hinduism, because Hinduism is just a way of life, and there existed people belonging to various school of thoughts and various religions also, because they did not agree with each other whenever they would discuss about God or life. So there were people who were atheists also, there were people who were agnostic also. Somewhere Ajivikas were agnostic. Yeah.
And they had patronage not just from the ruling class but from the common people. And that shows the level of support that these heterodox sects, so-called, had amassed during this time.
Similarly, Ajivikas also had various followers from different walks of life, common people, businessmen, merchants, rulers, and जो बहुत prominent जो इनके part थे, इनके sect के वो potters थे. कहते हैं जो मखाली गोसाला थे वो एक फीमेल पॉटर के घर में बहुत टाइम गुजारते थे. उनका नाम था हला हला, और because बड़े pots में ही बैठते थे, they would do their meditation, and also caves were important for them, not only for the Jains but for Ajivikas. Caves were also very important. They would also spend a lot of time in that. खाने की जब बात करते हैं तो कहते हैं कि they used to eat once in 3 days, sometimes mostly fortnightly. The diet was mostly fortnightly. वो भिक्षा लेते थे खाने के लिए, but because उनकी बाकी sects जो orthodox sects के साथ नहीं बनती थी, तो Buddhists have claimed that they have in fact criticized that ये दुनिया को दिखाने के लिए बहुत कम खाते हैं, but जो खाना अच्छा खाना जो होता है वो छुप के खाते हैं. भगवती सूत्र also mentions that मखाली गुसाला ने कहा है कि there were various leaders before him जिन्होंने इस पूरे स्ट्रक्चर को क्रिएट किया है, और इसी स्ट्रक्चर की जो that weight है वो उनके शोल्डर्स पे आके गिरी.
There are many mentions of laymen who also belongs to the Ajivika sect. In this you get in various Buddhist sources and Jain sources. During the Mauryan period, we get this knowledge from the Mahavamsa commentary and also the Divyavadana. Now, according to this, there was a very prominent advisor in the court of Bindusara who belonged to the Ajivika sect. There was another prominent person belonging to the Ajivika sect who was the chief advisor of the chief queen of Bindusar. But whether these two people are the same, we aren't exactly certain. According to the Mahavamsa records also, we have reference to how far and wide the thought of the Ajivikas travelled. So it is from these records that we know that the Ajivika sect had travelled as far as Ceylon, where a temple बकायदा बनाया गया था उनके लिए in Anuradhapura. In these records and in a few other records as well, there is mention of the advisor in the court of Bindusara who was an Ajivika. He prophesied the arrival of Ashoka as well as the power that he would amass and the glory that he would reach. Now, the fact that Ashoka himself was a friend of the sect is very clearly visible in his own inscriptions, where there are mentions of special attention being made to the Ajivika sect along with other sects as well.
So because Ashoka was a friend of Ajivika, so he had also commissioned the not construction, but also he commissioned Barabar caves. They were the rock cut caves in present day Bihar. He commissioned it for the Jains and the Ajivika sect for their to meditate or to retreat in that cave.
We know that the Ajivikas were a prominent people during the Mauryan Empire or in the Magadhan court, but that they were also respected members of society is also, or at least the fact that they were not persecuted, we can infer this from a little snippet of a tale, wherein during the reign of the last Nanda king, Chanakya, having cursed this Nanda king, he was trying to flee from him before the Nanda king could capture him. And in order to flee, he dressed up or in a way dressed down as a nude Ajivika ascetic, and he was able to get away from the Nanda king. But by the time of the Gupta Empire, the reach or the spread of the Ajivikas, at least in the northern part of the subcontinent, seems to have diminished. By this time, this is when the Vayu Puran was being compiled, and in that we have a stray reference of the Ajivikas somehow belonging to the Shudra caste, or them being a mix of different lower castes, and that they worship Pishachas. So this respect or respect at its best and indifference at its worst had now reached a point where they were considered to be of a lower social status, even though they had enough money to invest in the worship of their gods. So they were in no way economically distressed or poor, but they were still somehow considered to be outside or at the very end of the caste system, of the Hindu caste system.
Obviously, because they did not consider them to be part of that stringent orthodox caste system that was coined by, I would call it, by the Brahmins. Similarly, like how the Buddhists were, the Jains were. But Ajivikas were somewhat even more I would say flexible or easy going as compared to the other heterodox sects. Imagine they were the agnostic people of that time, where people think that something very new in the present days, modern India or modern world, where people say I'm an atheist, I'm agnostic, I'm a religious person, but these thoughts were already a part of the ancient India and also even the medieval times.
And also the fact that the Ajivikas were very separate in their beliefs and practices from not just the orthodox sects but also the other heterodox sects. The fact that women played a very important role. If you look at the case of Hala Hala and her workshop being used by Makhali Gosala as his center, the fact that they were relatively free in their practices. There was also this belief that whatever is happening. You can't do anything to change the course of nature. Karma hai, but your actions don't affect it. What has to come to you will come to you, good or bad. There are no totkas to get out of it. The fact that they did not practice celibacy, so they were very open in their, if we can call it bodily needs or things like that. So they were not really welcome, not just in the orthodox sector of thought, but also the heterodox sector. And this is clearly seen in how the Jains and the Buddhists perceived them.
Yeah, they were always criticizing them. And in a way, they would always say, even after Mikhali Gosala dies or passes away, he is going to be reborn as a person with power, and also who's going to be atrocious, who's going to make his people miserable.
Yeah.
So somewhere they always had this, they abhorred him a lot.
So while on one side we see that by the time of the Guptas, the power and the prestige of the Ajivikas had diminished to a certain extent. But on the other side, जब हम South में देखते हैं, especially towards what the information that we get from Tamil literature, we see that the Ajivikas really thrived there for a good amount of time. This is also where a slight deviation from the thought process also occurred. But in that deviation, we find that from the Ajivika school of thought, the earliest theory of the atomic structure was born, which according to A.L. Pasham, he says that the atomic theory of the Ajivikas was the oldest in India, if not the world. So for a sect to have that level of thinking during that time is tremendous. It's commendable.
According to the Ajivika sect, human beings are supposed to go through these 6 inevitable factors. There were life and death, gain and loss, joy and sorrow. तो मतलब हम कभी भी इन चीज़ों को नजरअंदाज, मतलब they have to be a part of your life. You cannot really ignore them. You have to go through them. That's how life is. Life sucks.
So the Ajivikas of South India had their own theory of elemental atoms, and this is made clear by all 3 Tamil texts that mention, or the chief Tamil texts that of the Ajivikas. So like we said, the original thought process of the Ajivikas, उससे हल्की deviation हो गई थी in the southern school of Ajivika thought. The concept of जो एक नियति का वो thought process था कि everything is unchanging, that in its core remained. There were certain additions that were made, and then some things were then taken out or they were modified. And the theory of atomic structure also evolved within the Ajivika school of thought. According to the earliest theory, there were 7 elemental atoms. These elemental atoms were called kaya, and they were and there were 7 kinds of elemental atoms: earth, fire, wind, water, life, joy, and sorrow. Now, in the original language, the suffix of kaya is added to 4 elemental atoms. So earth, fire, wind, water, they had kaya as a suffix, and the other 3, life, joy, and sorrow, did not. Now this would indicate that while the first 4 were more concrete in nature than the other 3, which were more maybe of a philosophical nature, it could also mean that this theory was written by 2 people. But regardless, what is common between these 7 elemental atoms is that they are unmanufactured. Also that these are barren, which means that they cannot change the way organic matter does. They can't affect each other. and therefore remain unchanged. So it was the person by the name of Pakuda, and according to A.L. Basham, Pakuda should also be considered among the founders of the Ajivaka sect, along with Makhali Gosala. And it was this guy that said, joy and sorrow, these are also atoms. And A.L. Basham says that he says this very profound line as an afterthought of the elemental theory that he gives. Another theory regards the first five elements as important. So, earth, fire, wind, water, and then life. Joy and sorrow don't find a place in this theory, and isme the element of life seems to have an additional quality of perceiving the other elements, but even then they remain unchanged and separate in a way. These atoms can neither be created nor they can be destroyed. They cannot be penetrated by each other. You can't, separate these atoms, or you can't break apart the atom by fission. And these are concepts of physics which the modern world discovered much later. So to have this level of thinking by an, for lack of a better word, by an obscure sect in the Indian subcontinent is great. What we did with it? Nothing. But we had it. These atoms also cannot be seen to the naked eye and can only be seen by divine sight. An additional input in the next theory is that while the atoms cannot be created or destroyed at their basic structure, they can come together to form things that we can perceive. So all of us are made out of these atoms, and whole structures of atoms have come together to make that being. In the next theory, which was given by a person who already viewed the Ajivaka sect as an unorthodox offshoot of Jainism. So according to this theory, again seven elemental atoms were mentioned. The first five remain the same, but the next two elemental atoms are those of virtue and vice. So in a way, to say that the morality of a person or the lack thereof also played an important role in existence. Now this is a deviation from the Ajivaka school of thought, but the fact that this was written by a person that sympathized with the Jain way of thought, it makes sense that way. That this person has then combined the two schools of thought, and this theory of elemental atoms has come from that.
So the Ajivika sect and the importance spread across almost the entire subcontinent and also beyond that. But by the 14th century, it got withered away. It somewhere got lost. We don't know why, and the decline is very obscure, but that what happened. Somewhere, I feel their thoughts and the practices and the basic meaning of meaning that they held in their sect, somewhere it still remained, because if people are attracted towards agnostic beliefs, so that is what Ajivika also stood for, and that is also that everything is predestined. There are some people who believe in this aspect, so that way, that means somewhere, though not as a sect, but somewhere their teachings have been ingrained in some people.
Yeah, and also I think what we saw with the latest theory of the elemental atoms, how a little bit of the Jain way of thinking also entered the Ajivaka school of thought. It is very likely that either the sect reached a place of maturity, where people just did not maybe believe in it because वो टोटके का कुछ वो नहीं
Yeah.
था, but also that it may be mingled or that the believers mingled with other sects.
Yeah.
Even the principal Ajivika sect for us to find centuries later.
Or they got saturated or fissioned out. You never know.
And for all we know, there still might be a few sects that are existing, and they just don't want anything to do with modern human social society.
That's all for today. I hope that you have liked our episode. Please like, share, and subscribe, and keep watching Tari. Imagine in one family, father was Jain, son was Ajivika, grandson was a Buddhist.
That points to the plurality of this country and how we were a nation of plural thoughts and beings.
Yeah.
I feel very deeply about this.
Yeah. I like where the child is given the freedom to choose
Yeah.
his or her own religion.
And also in a time, I think, where
It's
one
not-
narrative and one color is being forced upon people to project an idea of a nation, it is important to remember that we come from a very pluralistic history. It was
Even
very
in
vibrant.
ancient India.